Hey Watchers, today's episode is a gritty police procedural that features one of the best car chases ever made. Leading man Steve McQueen was not only a famous movie star at the time, but also a top-rated race car driver. So get ready for some swinging jazz and sweet muscle cars, because it's time for 1968's crime action thriller, Bullitt. Welcome to the Midnight Watch Podcast, the show where we discuss classic, cult, and modern classic movies.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Josh Baruto, and we review movies that are at least 10 years old. Fair warning, we're big on spoilers here, straight from the get-go.
We rate these movies in 4 categories. Number 1, the level of impact and success it had when it was released. Number 2, how relevant is it today? Number 3, our own personal enjoyment of this movie. And number 4, is it a midnight watch?
What is a midnight watch? It's a film which completely captures your attention, drawing you in. No matter what time or what part you start watching the movie, you have to finish it.
Steve McQueen, the king of cool. This is Bullitt, directed by Peter Yates, and I didn't write what the screenplay was. Dang it. Anyway, do you know who the screenplay was written by?
Screenplay by Alan Trestman, Harry Kleiner, and Robert L. Fish.
Okay, so yes, back to basically also Robert Fish was the original writer of the book Mute Witness, which this movie is based off of. Did you happen to read that book, Josh?
I have not.
Me neither. I'd never heard of it before yesterday. It had a budget of $4 million and a box office of return of $42.3 million. That's some good return there, especially in 1968 when this came out.
Yeah, I mean, just doing the math on it, I mean, that's a huge return.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's see, this is starring Steve McQueen, Jacqueline Bisset, Robert Vaughn, Robert Duvall, Don Gordon, and Simon Oakland. So there's a lot of interesting facts about this movie. I think this movie is interesting for, I would say, 2 specific reasons. Like, number 1, the thing I heard about this movie before I ever saw it was this has the ultimate car chase in it. And that's why this movie's super famous. And then number 2, another reason why it's famous is one of the first movies to have an awareness of realism in it. There's actually no movie sets in this movie. It's all shot on location in San Francisco, and which is really impressive. That I'm sure that saved you a ton of money. And I guess originally the story was based in Boston, but the mayor of San Francisco was trying to get more movies to film there, so he gave them like huge cuts, and they ended up moving it to San Francisco, and then he gave them pretty much the run of the city. The only place that they were denied filming at was the Golden Gate Bridge. They wanted to race across the Golden Gate Bridge, but they didn't get the permits for that, which that would have been pretty freaking cool.
That would have been pretty epic, for sure.
Yeah. So I want to save the car chase info for, let's do a deep dive in that a little bit later, and we'll talk about the rest of the movie first on that one. Let's see here. When was the first time you've seen this movie?
So, not to talk about it too much, but it was because of the car chase. So, do you remember our cousin Jeremy?
Oh, yeah.
The other Jeremy in our family?
Right, third cousin Jeremy, yeah.
Third or fourth cousin, yeah. Sir's cousin's grandson.
Twice removed.
However that broke down. Twice removed. I don't know. Anyways, so he had a 68 Charger.
Oh, he did?
It wasn't running, but yeah, he had a 68 Charger, like the one in the movie. I mean, same.
Did you actually...
Obviously not clean.
Did you actually see it?
Oh, yeah, he had it on his driveway. It was a piece of junk, but it was one he was going to rebuild. He also had a 73 Charger, which that one ran. That thing also was just ugly, beat up car, but it did run, and the engine ran pretty well.
Nice.
And that's back when I had my 73 Le Mans.
Ooh, yeah.
Pontiac Le Mans, which is another big old muscle car.
It's a boat of a car.
From that era. Yeah. So anyways, we were super into muscle cars at the time, obviously, and then he was like, dude, you got to see this movie. It's got my car, because the 68 was his dream car, so that was the one he always wanted to rebuild.
Oh, sweet.
Even though he was driving the 73. So that was my first experience watching it, because he was like, dude, you got to see it. And I did, and we'll talk about that more later. But that was my first time. That was probably back in 98 or 99.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense why I don't remember his cars at all. I was a wee lad at that time, probably more obsessed with
Right.
Mario than anything else.
Right. Well, I remember you and his brother
Brandon.
There we go.
Yeah.
You guys were very much into video games at the time.
Oh, 100%. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, still love video games, but yeah.
Not as much as back then, probably.
No, exactly.
Let's see. The first time I saw this movie, I remember Dad talked about it every now and then. Like I think unofficially, I'll have to ask him, but unofficially, I think Dad was a Steve McQueen fan because I think pretty much the world was a Steve McQueen fan.
Yeah.
And even though he was only in like 24 movies, which I mean that doesn't sound like that's not a lot, but just it's not like James Dean where he was only in 3 movies and he passed away. I mean, Steve McQueen lived up until 1980 and he passed away from then. But he unfortunately passed away from like a cancer from asbestos. I thought it was cancer from smoking, but it was from asbestos. I don't know if that's from him living on the streets when he was a kid or where he got that poisoning from, but yeah, that's why he passed away.
Well, I mean, there was asbestos in everything back then.
Oh, that's true. You're absolutely right.
That was a very common building material,
right?
You know, in the ceiling of your house and in all sorts of tiles in the floor. I mean, they used it in everything. So there's probably a lot of people that died from it. Without realizing it.
That is a great point. See, I think of it now as like, oh, of course, it's asbestos, it's poisonous. Like, don't use it. But yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that. Especially like also too with like the paint in people's houses that's older than 1980s.
Oh yeah,
you can get lead poisoning and stuff.
Full of lead.
Yeah, but at least Superman can't be doing lousy peeping Tom on you. So, anyways, so when I first watched this movie, I think it was about 10, 15 years ago when I was just... No, it was before that. Because I bought a Steve McQueen box set of like 8 Steve McQueen movies because I'd always heard that he was the king of cool. So I was like, I want to check this guy out. So it had that in it. It had Papillon. It had Tom Horn. It had The Getaway by Sam Peckinpah. And the main movie that I remember liking out of these was Bullitt. And so this movie kind of just stuck with me, and then I didn't watch it again for a long time, and then I picked it up in a bin for $5 and watched it again, and I was really impressed with like the opening credits, the way it was put together. It's smooth. Like it reminds me of the feeling from the new Ocean's 11 movies where it's just cool. Like you feel cool watching the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is it. I put that in my notes too. This was absolutely a cool movie. I feel like it still is.
Yeah.
You know, but we love older things, but even I was just thinking like if I had seen this in 1968 or 69, I would have been like, this is a cool movie.
Oh yeah,
like you said, you feel cool watching it.
Yeah, it was a massive hit, and critics and audience alike both really liked this movie. So this movie was definitely I wouldn't say blockbuster because that term really wasn't around until 1980s with Steven Spielberg created Jaws, but it was definitely a hit though. It's probably between this and The Magnificent Seven, I would definitely say this is probably one of Steve McQueen's most famous. I don't know. Do you think this is Steve McQueen's most famous movie?
I would say so because of the car scene, the car chase scene. But I mean, if you're looking at his body of work, and if you're, I don't know, man, you talk about westerns. I mean, Magnificent Seven. I mean, he was huge as an actor in westerns. But
he was in the TV show.
Yeah, I don't know.
He was in that TV show Wanted Dead or Alive, and then he was in the Towering Inferno. So he was in a bunch of movies. Oh, of course, The Great Escape. That was a big movie.
Right. I think if you talk to people, like if you talk to boomers, I don't know what they would say. It might just be everyone has their favorite Steve McQueen movie, but I feel like this one's pretty iconic, not just because of him, but because of what happened in this movie, more so than maybe some of the other ones.
Yeah.
I mean, the motorcycle jump in The Great Escape is obviously a legendary Hollywood thing.
Right, yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like this, as a sequence in a movie, I feel like it still absolutely holds up, and it's still, it set the benchmark super high.
Right. No, absolutely. So
we're going to talk about that more later.
Okay, it's decided. This is Steve McQueen's most popular movie then.
Yes.
Under strong authority.
According to the Midnight Watch podcast.
Yes, exactly. You heard it here first, folks. Yeah, so I think, and then so I finally watched the movie, and I liked it. I had mixed feelings about it, though. So let's get in that synopsis, and then we'll break down that police procedural, and then get into the car chase.
Yes, sir. Here we go. Thank you, Wikipedia, once again. On a Friday night in Chicago, mobster Johnny Ross is fleeing town, running from the outfit, otherwise known as the Chicago Mafia. The next morning in San Francisco, SFPD detective Lieutenant Frank Bullitt and his team, Delgetti and Stanton, are tasked by Senator Walter Chalmers with guarding Ross over the weekend until he can be presented as a witness to a Senate subcommittee hearing on organized crime on Monday morning. The detectives are told he is in a cheap hotel on Embarcadero. Delgetti takes the first shift, followed by Stanton and then Bullitt. At 1 a.m. Sunday morning, while Stanton is phoning Bullitt to say Chalmers and a friend want to come up, Ross unchains the room door. 2 hitmen burst in, shooting Stanton in the leg and Ross in the chest. Chalmers holds Bullitt responsible. Ross dies in the hospital from his wounds, but Bullitt conceals the death to keep the investigation open, sending the body to the morgue as a John Doe. An informant says that Ross was in town because he stole millions of dollars from the Chicago outfit. Bullitt also finds out he made a long-distance phone call to a hotel in San Mateo. While driving his 68 Ford Mustang, Bullitt becomes aware he's being followed by a 68 Dodge Charger, driven by the 2 hitmen. An extended chase ensues through the streets of San Francisco to Brisbane. Eventually, the Dodge crashes off the road, killing its occupants in a fire explosion. Bullitt and Delgetti are confronted by their boss, Captain Sam Bennett, as well as Chalmers, who is assisted by another SFPD, Captain Baker, after being served a writ of habeas corpus. Bullitt reveals that Ross has died. Bennett delays enforcing the writ, allowing Bullitt to investigate the lead of the long-distance phone call to San Mateo. Due to his car being damaged in the chase, Bullitt gets a ride from his girlfriend, Kathy. At the hotel, Bullitt finds a woman from the phone call garroted in her room. Kathy follows the police to the crime scene and is horrified. On the way back to San Francisco, she confronts Bullitt about his work, the negative impact it's having on his life, and whether or not they have a future together because of it. While examining the victim's luggage, Bullitt and Delgetti discover a travel brochure for Rome and traveler's checks made out to an Albert and Dorothy Rennick. Bullitt requests their passport applications from Chicago. Bullitt, Captain Bennett, Chalmers, and Captain Baker gather around the telecopier as applications arrive. It turns out Chalmers sent Bullitt to guard a doppelganger, Albert Rennick, a used car salesman from Chicago whose wife Dorothy had been staying in San Mateo. Bullitt realizes that Ross was playing the politically ambitious Chalmers by using Rennick as a decoy so he could slip out of the country Sunday night. Delgetti and Bullitt watch the Rome gate at San Francisco, or I should say the Rome flight, at the gate at San Francisco International Airport. However, the real Ross, on Rennick's passport, has switched to an earlier London flight with his ticket for Rome. Bullitt boards the plane after he is ordered to return to the terminal, but the mobster escapes through the rear cabin door. A foot chase ensues across the runways and taxiways. In the crowded passenger terminal, Ross kills a deputy sheriff before being shot dead by Bullitt. Chalmers arrives to survey the scene, but leaves, saying nothing. Bullitt arrives home early on Monday morning to find Kathy, who, having chosen to stay with him, is asleep in his bed.
Oh,
there you have it.
Well, I mean, one other thing happens at the end, too, though. Like, it shows him, he specifically takes his gun off, and it has a point of him putting his gun on his clothes as he gets ready to take a shower. And they linger on that shot. So to me, that shows that he is wanting to step away from the violence in his life as well. Not necessarily to come away from as being a detective, but like still wants to invest in the relationship. That's how I took that. What do you think?
I sort of took it as, just another day at the office. Nothing's going to change.
maybe I'm more of a romantic than.
You know what? I hope what you were saying was the right way.
I will say this, like, okay, so in the synopsis, it tells you what's going on, but watching the movie, they don't tell you what's going on. Like, you have to pay attention to each scene to figure out like what is going on in this movie, makes it, I guess, more real. There's not a lot of dialogue in this movie, and there were several critics at the time that praised this movie for having people talk the way people really talk. And so,
Right.
like, literally, I was once McQueen, like, the thing came through the machine that predated a fax machine, and they saw that Rennick was actually a Ross. Then he just moves on, and they start doing. I was like, wait, what happened? And I had to process what happened. And when they was like, oh, they all realized they were getting played. Excuse me.
Right.
And then he of course went to find the real Ross, and I thought that was actually cool because it's kind of a simplistic plot, but the way that it's written, you have to pay attention to it because they don't tell the audience. You don't have that guy in the room where he's like, so Rennick was actually not Ross. We just got played.
Right.
The only line they gave you is, "You sent me to guard the wrong man." That's it.
Right.
And
I know I had to stop the movie a few times and go back to rewatch what I had just watched because I don't remember. I've seen this movie, I think 3 times before watching this. It'd been a long time, but I've seen it at least 2 or 3 times, and obviously the car chase is what really sticks in your head,
right.
And kind of nothing else. So I was really intrigued, like, why don't I remember the rest of what's going on? But one of the reasons is you have to be engaged. It's kind of not a casual movie, unless you know what's going on. Because, like, one thing I love too is that as soon as it goes to like a real life scenario where, especially the medical stuff, so when they're in the surgery or they're taking care of somebody medically, all the music stops and it's just the procedural chatter of everybody working on the patient. And I also read that they used actual medical personnel, real doctors, real nurses, real ambulance drivers, the whole deal when it came to doing all those scenes. They weren't actors. They were actually talking real medical jargon.
I think that's
and it just
so cool.
It's so real, which we're used to that now. Most, any decent police procedural or medical procedural show these days, they've come a long ways. They have, way better, what's the word I'm looking for? People telling them what to do the right way, the correct way. Mm-hmm. And here, I don't think that really happened much before that. Maybe on some like doctor shows here and there where they try to get it as accurate as possible, but
right.
It feels so real, and you're like, man, this movie's pretty old too, but they really nail it.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Because like before that, even with the Magnificent Seven, they got the big orchestra, you got like good chummy scenes and different things like that. Stuff is kind of overdone in a Hollywood way, and this movie is very much. They're trying to make it as real as possible. And so you're kind of just watching this guy from a realistic standpoint. And I feel like at the time that was definitely really helped this movie to stand out. But I feel though, and now watching it, after how it's influenced so many different movies, so many different genres, it's kind of slow in different scenes because we're used to this stuff. So it doesn't amaze us. So we're just kind of like, okay, this is like 20 minutes of no music and they're talking and stuff, but like, I mean, it's sort of interesting, but it is if you take the time to pay attention to it. But otherwise, like you said, you kind of just drift like, okay, this is a boring scene. They're just working on the guy. Right. But if you really stop and listen to it, you're like, oh, they were on purpose capturing all of this dialogue, real life dialogue happening. Right. And Steve McQueen or whoever the actual actors are just kind of floating in the background. They're there, but I mean, it's like they know their role as police officers. Okay, I need to step back and let these guys do their job. And that's, I mean, it's very, very real world, real life. I did enjoy the part though when they go through the evidence and they're looking through it and just the way they're like, hey, I need this evidence, and they're like, oh, hey, can you fill out this form? Can you do this? I thought that was interesting. Right. I did think it was funny though. They went through the evidence not wearing gloves, and then Steve McQueen's like, he's like, hey, can you fingerprint this? Can you fingerprint and I'm like, dude, your freaking fingerprints are all over that now. Which, I mean, the forensics text will be like, thanks, guy. Yeah. I have your prints on file, but now I got to. Thanks a lot, Steve. I gotta look past all of them. You're the reason I smoke, Steve. but yeah, that was a little bit of a blunder there, I thought. And then also one thing another thing that I do kind of, I don't fault it because this is the story of, I mean, it's in the story, but I did think it was kind of weird how they play up the point where they're like, it's a two-man team for the hitman. You got the trigger man and a backup. And the dude fires 2 shots. That's it. You know, one to the cop,
Right.
and then one to kill the guy. And I was kind of like, why didn't he, like, again, though, this is me thinking of Tom Cruise from Collateral, a movie that was made way later.
Right.
Where it's like, you know, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, you know, just like.
Right. Double tap.
Yeah, make sure they're.
You always double tap.
Always double tap. Yeah, make sure that they're dead. And so, yeah, he just does 1 shot and then leaves. And, of course, the dude stays alive for quite some time. And that's why a chase ensues. And then, like, the hitman keeps coming back trying to make sure he took out the guy. And I was just thinking, I was like, well, the only explanation I can think of is it's California and there's a lot of laws about guns. And so maybe he could only get 2 rounds and then he had to jet. So that's a terrible thing. I'm thinking it was just
that. Yeah, it was just that kind of fell flat.
Right, because then later he must have gotten another more shotgun rounds for in the car chase when he fires off several shots. This is the first movie, though, to be considered to have a modern car chase in it. So if you like Fast and Furious, if you like Gone in 60 Seconds, anything that has to do with car chases nowadays, like this is the granddaddy.
Oh, like the Bourne.
Oh yeah, Bourne Identity. Yeah,
and Bourne Supremacy. I think they both had pretty good car chases. Those are some of the best parts of those movies, in my opinion.
Right, and of course the Italian Job. You know, like. All those movies were directly okay. Also, too. Okay, so The French Connection, another really famous movie, has a crazy car chase in it. That was directly influenced by this movie because The French Connection came out in 1971. And another cool thing, Bill Hickman, who plays the wheelman for the hitman in this, he was a real stunt car driver. So he was playing himself like the entire time. And I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going right into the car chase sequence. Okay, hold up. Hold up, back up. Okay.
Whoa.
So anyways, going back to it, opening credits real quick. Super cool. Yeah. Super cool. I loved the music. I loved
with the jazz.
Yeah. So cool. The way that the titles came up, how it kept transitioning when all the dudes show up. Like I literally was just like, dude, this is like some classic 1960s gangster scene right here. Like it was freaking cool. And I think
they really also showed San Francisco as being a pretty cool town, like especially in the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very hip place to be.
Right. I agree. I really liked actually that they had. You get to see this cool view of the 1960s San Francisco. And especially, too, like, almost blown away by the fact, like, in the movie. Like, this movie takes place over Saturday and Sunday and a little bit into Monday. They go to talk to the police chief, and he's taking his family to church. And it's just, like, flocks of people are going to church and how the San Francisco, the streets are, like, they're clear because either you're sleeping or you're in church or something. Just totally different than nowadays. But... yeah, Steve McQueen, though, was an icon because of the counterculture at the time. So with him being always being an anti-hero, I think this is the only movie where he plays a police detective because he had trouble with the law when he was a kid, but he's still kind of an anti-hero, though, as this police detective.
Right, which is the one thing that I liked was at one point when the suspect dies, what they think is the mobster, and his captain pulls him in the room, and he's kind of giving him the stern captain talk, you know, to his subordinate who messed up. He's all, I need you to play it by the book. And then like one line later, he's like, do what you think is best. I'll back you up, or I'll try to back you up. You're like, wait, which one is it?
Right.
You want to buy the book, or you want me to just keep playing it like a cowboy?
Right. He's like, it's your case. You figure it out. Yeah. I do think that's pretty funny.
So I thought that was funny too. Oh, and then of course I have to point this out. So right before the mobster gets hit in the hotel room, before the door gets kicked in, and he's listening to the radio, and there's a commercial. The DJ starts talking about our own San Francisco Giants taking on the Dodgers and whatever it was from there. But I'm just like, sweet.
Really? I see.
My team.
I missed that. That's awesome. Did you
plug in the Giants?
Did you see any Giants paraphernalia inside the movie besides that?
I didn't notice any. Doesn't mean it wasn't there. Did you see some?
No, but I was thinking too though, they didn't really go. They stayed at like classy joints or actually at like the police station, or like the only place I think that they would have actually shown that might have been at the airport at the end.
Possibly, or you would think maybe in some of the bars. But again, you're right. They were kind of classy. They weren't like a blue collar bar or something where you might see
Right.
sports paraphernalia or whatnot.
Steve McQueen.
So yeah, I wasn't really looking. Maybe there would have been people on the street wearing like a Giants ball cap or
Right. When you were talking about the Chicago mob, you're like the outfit, otherwise known as the Chicago the Bears, and I was like, that kept popping up into my head. But let's see.
Of course, that joke was a lot later.
Yes, absolutely. Before we get to the car chase, so I like the opening camera shot is done beautifully. It is like way far away, slowly moving in to the street way down below, and then like the car that it's actually tracking comes into view, and it slowly speeds up a little bit, but it's such a smooth shot. I was really impressed. I rewound it and was like, dude, they track this like beautifully. That was awesome.
Right.
And then I really like
it's.
Oh, go ahead.
Finish your thought.
I really like I was just gonna jump to the next scene. Go ahead.
I just want to also say the camera work in this movie is amazing. I mean, it's obvious for the car chase scene and the they won an Oscar for editing,
right?
Which the way they put the car scene together is amazing. But there's so many other great scenes.
Oh yeah, in
this movie that are just shot so awesome. Just jumping ahead briefly, at the end of the movie when they're running around on the active taxiway and maybe even the runway at points.
Yeah,
super dangerous. I mean, whoever the stunt guys were, I mean that's dangerous. I mean, if those planes ran over you, I mean that'd kill you. But then just being ingested by an engine, or I work around airplanes, so I'm aware of all that all the time just because of my job. But you see that, and maybe you take it for granted if you're just running around these airplanes. It's like that's super dangerous,
dude.
But they caught the shots really cool too, though.
Right, and I actually looked into it. Apparently, that was Steve McQueen, like diving underneath the airplane when that airplane was going down the taxiway, and I know he would have done. I think he would have done 100% of his stunts if they would have let him. But I know, like, legally in the studios, just they shut him down. I mean, that's like the jump, the motorcycle jump in The Great Escape. He was gonna do it, but they wouldn't let him. Right.
So that was his friend, who was another motorcycle enthusiast like himself.
It was Buddy.
I mean, he would have done it.
Yeah.
Right. And he did a lot of the driving in the chase scenes. He probably could have done all of it, but again, legally they wouldn't let him. He didn't have Tom Cruise status yet, where he could tell them, my movie, my stunts.
Well, even Tom Cruise, I think there's certain dangerous things they don't allow him to do. But he did crash his car during the making of this movie, and his wife at the time was freaked out and complained to the director. So then, like, when he showed up the next day, then Bud Eakins, who is the guy that did the motorcycle jump in The Great Escape,
right,
and who was one of the stunt drivers in this movie, like, he was suited up to look just like him, and apparently Steve McQueen was very frustrated. But,
right.
So,
which, hey, I gotta give it to Steve McQueen. I guess when there was Johnny Carson on the Late Show was interviewing him one time about The Great Escape, and he was telling him, "Wow, that was an amazing jump you made," and he just stopped him right there. He's like, "No, Johnny, that was my friend Bud Eakins or whoever."
Right.
He didn't take credit, which a lot of movie stars do. They just take the credit even though that wasn't them.
Right. No,
he just shut it down and like, nope, that was that guy.
He was embarrassed actually that he didn't get to do the jump, so which is why he really pushed to do as much of the driving as possible in this movie. So,
I believe it. He was a real deal guy. I mean, actual top-rated race car driver.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, they
kind of like Paul Newman, I guess, when you think about it. But I guess, I mean, not that movie stars are just, aren't, into real life sports and things and are good at it as well. But it seems like back then, it just seemed like a little bit more of that dude playing a tough character on screen. He was a legit tough character in real life.
Well, it reminded me of John Wayne, where John Ford, the director, said that John Wayne wasn't an actor. He was a force of will that movies were created around. And so right. I feel like Steve McQueen, maybe not to that extent, but Steve McQueen kind of played Steve McQueen in a lot of movies, which is fine because we like Steve McQueen. Like, girls want to be with him, guys want to be him. And so
Right.
that totally makes sense though. Why, doing this stuff. Okay, let me go just a few more tidbits because we're chomping at the bit, wanting to get into that chase scene.
What everybody's been waiting for.
Right. Yeah. If you want to fast forward to
what we've been waiting for.
If you want to fast forward to minute 42, that's when we jump. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see here. So one thing I thought was really interesting, the first scene when they introduced Chalmers. Robert Vaughn, I got to give him credit, dude. That guy, I have unfortunately, I've never seen him play a good guy, but he predominantly known for being the main guy.
You never watched You never watched Man from U.N.C.L.E.?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I want to, but that's the thing that he got famous for, and so he was like the suave guy. But I've only seen him as like, of course, in the A-Team, and then I think he was the bad guy in a Clint Eastwood movie when they were like had that Firebird jet or something like that. I'm trying to remember that. But
yeah. Firefox? Is that what that was called?
I think it was called that, yeah. But I always see him as the bad guy in movies. And in this movie, technically, he's not really a bad guy, but he's a snake. He'll do whatever
He's an a-hole for sure.
Exactly. And he plays it very well. But apparently, like, he's a very charming, nice guy. Steve McQueen actually asked him to be in the movie. He was like, dude, you got to be in this movie. And he read the script. He didn't understand it and he didn't like it. And they just kept throwing money at him until he finally was like, well, you guys are going to pay me all this money. I'm going to do it. And then later, he enjoyed the experience. Of course, the movie was extremely well received. And so he constantly had said after that was his favorite movie that he ever made. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
That is. Well, and the dynamic between the two of them is really cool because he plays that kind of weaselly snake politician.
Yeah.
And he's always trying to bait people and trying to get the reaction out of them. And Steve McQueen, I mean, that's his nickname, King of Cool or whatever. He's so calm and he does not get baited.
No.
I mean, at one point there's no point there where he really gets that upset and he just kind of just walks away or just shuts it down.
Right.
With a line and moves on. I mean, it was very cool to see the two of them work together.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the opening sequence though, when they introduce Robert Vaughn, Steve McQueen stops. They pull over to the house and they go up and they open the door. And the first shot is a camera angle low to the ground, and you just see a bunch of ladies' legs and skirts, and then you see Steve McQueen farther off, silhouetted in the door frame, and he's just got a look on his face where he's just kind of looking around, but it so clearly immediately shows he is out of his element. Like he is surrounded by it's some sort of a fundraiser thing, I think, of a women's society,
some kind of high society thing.
Yeah, and he's just waiting there to talk to Robert Vaughn. And so then Robert Vaughn, when they introduce him, I love how the camera is on two other people, and you see the back of his head, but it's not centered on him. So then when he turns around, he turns into the camera, and it's just really cool camera work.
Right.
And it's smooth because immediately the first thing you feel when you see Robert Vaughn is, oh, this guy's smooth. And then you kind of like him at first because he's like, hey, Steve, we're going to, I'm going to take you with me.
Yeah, we're going to do great things together.
Right. And then as soon as like it goes sour, he's immediately like, I'm blaming everything on you. And you're like, oh, this guy's a douche.
Right.
So, but
I know he's like, I'm going to preside over your crucifixion.
Yeah.
Like,
dang. Personally preside over your public crucifixion. Yeah.
Right.
So I thought that was I like the camera work in that, just showing that's like the one sequence though where Steve McQueen's just like he's there and he's just waiting, but like I wouldn't know if he's uncomfortable, but he's out of his element there. Versus the rest of the movie, he's like the guy in charge or doing, even when his superiors are there, he's still like, I'm only obeying you because you're my superior in this case, but not with Robert Vaughn the entire time. He's just secretly giving him the FUIs like the entire time.
Right. Totally. But I gotta say, his character is still very respectful. Like he's very polite always. I mean, people, women, greet him or say things to him or, and he's always, for an anti-hero, and I'm just saying, he's always just like, thank you. And he does this thing. He's not just some, kind of a character who are just, I don't care about you, I'm the coolest, and he's just not that way. He's just, you can tell, like he doesn't have to throw people, throw shade at people or throw dirt on people for them to know he's cool. Like it's just, he is, and he's very respectful in all the different scenarios he's in.
Yes, absolutely. Like the part when the nurse is like, are you the hungry policeman? And he's like, oh yes, thank you so much. Right. And I like the part too when they first introduce his girlfriend and she's asking him for help with to read the stats off of the pipeline,
Right.
and this stuff he does that first, and then she's like, "What about this?" And he's like, "Oh, I lost my place." And it's a fun banter between them because you can tell like he just was like, "Okay, I'm kind of done with this," and at the same time the girl's like,
Right.
she's like, "Oh, that's funny." Like obviously you're just like, "Let's move on," in a fun way, not in an a-hole way. And
Right.
and so they have a cool dynamic which introduces Ron Burgundy in the jazz scene. So
Yes, that jazz flute, man.
yeah, as soon dude, that scene startled me because like the beginning, you know, they have the bass where it's like boom, 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 boom,
Right.
and it shows like the band starting to pick up, and then it just crashes the cymbal, and then that girl just cruising on the flute, just and immediately I thought of Ron Burgundy from Anchorman.
Right. Yeah.
It was cool. Steve McQueen, once again, he saw that band in a club and was like, "Hey, you guys want to be in a movie?" So they put that band in the movie. So that scene though shows him eating dinner with several other people and then his girlfriend, and he's like staring across the table at his girlfriend, and they catch eyes, and they have this cool. I like how there's not a lot of dialogue, so they show a lot of.
Right.
A lot of emotion just at them looking at each other, and then he smiles kind of relaxed, and then she smiles, and it's just cool little dynamic of like she's like
Yes.
the main person in that scene, like people are talking and he's just kind of there, but you can tell like he loves her, he's in support of her, and I just like that. So then like when they have other scenes, because she's not in the movie that much, those scenes matter because of this little
Right.
emotional.
Because they do have a deep emotional connection, which I mean, it's going to come up again in once again about the car scene, car chase scene, but this movie does really play on, unspoken emotion and the dynamics of that.
Yes.
And, in all the different ways that it can come across, whether it's a really intense scene or whether, like you said, there's like an emotional love interest kind of a scene, or there's sadness or frustration. I mean, they did an amazing job delivering on all of those emotions without there having to be dialogue walking you through it.
Absolutely. We are starting to run out of time, so I have like...
Well, we got to get to the
chase.
main stuff.
I have 5 trivia things.
Right to the chase.
I have like 5 trivia things I want to read real quick, and then we'll jump right into the chase.
Right.
So about 50% of the film was actually shot silent, so the background noise, sound effects, and spoken dialogue were looped in post-production. Unfortunately, you can really tell this in a couple scenes where it's just kind of weird that there's not as much sound when they're walking around. But that's just also because nowadays, like sound effects and the sound guys nowadays are so freaking good at their job.
Right.
But anyways, so they had that. Then this movie was one of the first movies actually to be rated by the MPAA, and so it was originally rated M, and then they re-released it in theaters as a PG rating. And then also the gunshot wounds in this movie. So Bonnie and Clyde, which came out a year earlier, popularized the use of squibs, so you get the nice blood splurts when it shows somebody getting shot. This is the first movie that used that and incorporated blood packets to get splatter on the wall. So that scene when the dude gets shot with a shotgun in the movie, it's pretty graphic for the time. It's just like boom, like
right.
So that was probably really surprising. So that was pretty cool. Also, Steve McQueen rode around with some cops to get the layout of San Francisco and some procedural stuff. So the cops wanted to test his mettle and see how much of a strong man he really was. So they took him to the morgue, and apparently they were impressed with him because he showed up and he was just chilling in the morgue and he was eating an apple while they were showing him around. So
oh my gosh,
that was pretty funny. John Woo, who's a really famous action movie director, and William Friedkin, who made all kinds of movies like To Live and Die in L.A. and of course The Exorcist. This is their favorite movie apparently.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. All right, let's do it.
And then we do have a quick little shout out to Robert Duvall.
Oh yeah,
the cabbie.
Yeah, Robert Duvall.
Because he really wasn't in a lot up until this point. Just small roles, little TV roles.
I mean, he was in To Kill a Mockingbird, but it was like he didn't talk. He was
right.
Yeah.
Right, and it was, but anyways, and it's funny. He actually got a credit, like a legit credit. When they're rolling through it at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. And he doesn't have much dialogue, and he doesn't even have very many clear shots of him, in the, as the cabbie driving around.
Right.
But they totally, he's a build official build character in there, which I thought was interesting.
Right. Yeah, that is pretty cool, actually, to get to see him as his career would expand, especially in The Godfather, which come out a couple years later, and move on from there to be juggernaut of an actor that we know nowadays. All right, ready?
Put your seatbelt on. It's serious time now, which I love that part in the movie when McQueen, well, first the hitmen are following him.
Right.
And then he fools them. They think that they lost him, and then all of a sudden in the Charger's rearview mirror, you see him come up over the hill.
Oh yeah,
in his Mustang. Such an awesome shot. And then the driver, who you said was a professional stunt driver, anyways.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because he totally looks like some nerdy accountant.
Right.
So it's like you have the accountant and the grandpa, who's the other hitman.
Right.
Such an odd pair, but they're so cool. But he's got those sweet leather racing gloves on. Yeah. And as soon as he sees him coming behind him, he clicks on that seatbelt, which is ironic because, they weren't even really, I don't think you had to wear seatbelts at that point still. It was just more of a recommended thing. But to kind of just show the importance of, all right, it's about to get serious here.
It's about to go down.
Clicks that seatbelt, and then he punches it.
Yeah.
And dude, as far as like the sound not being great, bro, one of the best parts about this chase scene, aside from the amazing camera angles and these sweet cars, flying around the hills and roads of San Francisco, the sound, the audio is phenomenal.
Yes, it is.
Dude, it is epic. Those just roaring engines, just that burbling exhaust, squealing tires. Oh my gosh, they nailed it. Like, one thing that bothers me is you'll see, even in newer shows, you'll see a car, rev up and like burn out or take off really fast. And usually it'll be like some little four banger, like a Camry, and it sounds like a V8. So it's like absolutely the wrong sound.
Oh yeah.
And this was 100%. I mean, these are muscle cars in their prime.
Oh yeah.
And they're just,
The only thing the only thing that they did to soup up the cars was to add some to the suspension because of the stunts they were going to be doing driving over the San Francisco hills, because obviously they clear air in these scenes when they're just like bam, bam, just like,
and they're slamming down. Yeah. When they hit some of those valley points on the hills, I mean, they're just pancaking.
Right. Yeah.
But oh man, those engines.
It was.
And so, okay, I got to take it back to our cousin Jeremy. So he was like, in the show, the Mustang catches, especially on like straightaways. The argument is, well, here's the two things. So the Charger had a bigger engine and about 50 more horsepower. Mm-hmm. And anybody please correct me. I don't have my specs in front of me, so I'm ballparking it. About 50 horsepower more. And it's just kind of one of those, if you're a Mopar guy or if you're a Ford guy, I mean, everybody thinks their car company is best, but our cousin, who was a big Mopar guy, the argument has kind of always been on a straightaway, especially when they leave the city and they're heading out toward Brisbane, then that Charger should have just pulled away and never been caught by the Mustang, but the Mustang kind of easily catches up to it. That being said, the other argument is the weight to power ratio was a little more even on the Mustang. So technically it might have caught up better, but the argument's always that Charger would have sucked the headlights out of that Mustang on the straightaway.
That's actually what I heard about that too. But then I was doing some, like you're saying, like the Mustang, smaller engine, but then of course as well, lighter car, so it didn't need to have to pull as much. The Charger's a lot heavier. Right. But that being said, I remember racing Jeremy on 101 between Santa Rosa and Healdsburg. Mm-hmm. And his Mustang, or his Charger had the big block 440 in it, and mine had either a 327 or a 350 Chevy small block. And yeah, dude, he would leave. We'd be both, hauling down the highway, and he would just smoke me, just gone. And I had, roughly the same size engine as the Mustang. Of course, my car was a lot bigger than the Mustang. Yeah, but that Charger, which was still as big as my car, gone, just smoked me. Yeah, they did recreate the sequence. I think that Motor Trend did that in 2008, and so this is right. I know they've done comparisons. Right, this is something that like they've constantly gone on before this. I'm sure, like you said, Dodge and Ford fans are going to constantly just be, arguing about
Right.
this. And so now the real hero of the story, though, is the Corvette that they mounted the cameras to that had to be faster than the
That's
cars.
right.
They had to be, so that, because originally the director, Peter Yates, was like, hey, we're going to, if you guys would be going around 70 to 80 miles an hour. And Steve McQueen and Bill Hickman, they both got up to over 120 miles an hour in the cars. And
Right.
which is insane, because if you're going to turn at that,
It's insane.
at that time.
Oh, I know.
Like you're dead if you do something wrong like that.
Right.
Watching the sequence now compared to, like, say, Fast and the Furious, I would say Fast and the Furious, if you don't know anything about cars, Fast and Furious is more entertaining because of the camera angles and all that stuff. But then if you watch it, this is extremely gritty car scene. They don't pull away. There's not fast cuts. It's literally just like,
Right.
you see them take that turn, and that car is doing all it can to stay on the road so it doesn't fishtail into
Right.
the pedestrian cars.
Well, and it actually, the Charger hit a camera
It
at
did.
one point too.
You're right.
Which, have you seen that scene? I don't remember that I've seen it, because they cut it out of later releases of the movie.
I have not, unfortunately. You see it like right when it's about to hit, it cuts kind of weirdly. But yeah, you're right. In the original view, the original theatrical cut and a couple other versions of it, it actually, you see it hit. And the reason... So this is interesting, but the reason sometimes people were talking about it, they're like, oh, it's kind of dumb. Like the Charger hits the car, and then later there's no damage on the side of the car.
Well, yeah.
It's because they edited the car chase out of sequence. So that's why, like, you'll even see Steve McQueen's car at one point has damage on the side, and then later it has no damage, and then that's when he scrapes the side of the car. So that's a little bit of just continuity errors, but at the same time, though, like we said, this is the first big boy car chase scene in America.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right. And then, but not only that, you don't care. Like, I knew about all that watching this movie, and I'm like, I don't care. This is like my heart literally, by the time the chase scene is over, I seriously, like, dude, my heart is racing. Like,
Yes.
it got me that sucked in. And maybe I'm just a total fanboy about cars and the scene, sequence in general. But I mean, it literally gets you pumped up, and you're like, I don't care that these are obviously different cars getting rotated in and out, and the damage is different, and the side view mirrors disappear from scene to scene.
Right. No, but it's still really cool, and I love that they kept the mistakes in. For example, like when the Dodge hits the car, that wasn't planned. They hit it. They keep it.
Right.
They keep it in because it makes it more real.
But that's so real.
Yeah.
That's so real. I don't care how good of a driver you are.
Right.
That is a massive car that weighs a ton. It's got them skinny little stock tires on it.
Right. Which they put.
So it's actually surprising that they didn't wreck them even more.
Right.
Or at least, I mean, I know they did wreck them, but
they put smaller tires on the Charger so the Mustang could be closer to it. So, which is pretty interesting. Oh, and the Charger lost 6 hubcaps in the course of them filming it, which is pretty funny.
right, right.
But Bill
Where those extra 2 wheels come from?
Right. That's actually, like I said, the Hitman was low on bullets, so he was throwing hubcaps.
Throwing hubcaps at him.
So Bill Hickman, yet again, the bad guy hitman stunt driver or character, did all of his own driving because he was stuntman. Steve McQueen did a lot of it, and then Bud Ekins did other parts of it. And unfortunately, I can't remember the name, but there was a third stunt driver that did a few parts of it. But yeah, Steve McQueen did as much as possible. And it's pretty cool because...
Right. Well, especially all the scenes where you can see who's driving it. I know that was him.
Right. Well, he intentionally tried to keep his head close to the door so you could see that it was actually him. Oh, like the one scene where the Charger quickly turns to the right and then goes driving down the street, and then Steve McQueen misses the turn and then backs up and peels out.
Yeah.
Like that again, that was a mistake. That wasn't actually that wasn't planned, and they kept it in because it just looked freaking cool. And
right.
And then the other part,
there's just so much realism in this movie. It's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Like, that's the one thing I think that makes this movie special is they really went for realism and they nailed it. It was pretty much widely received that this movie was a very realistic movie in a completely different Hollywood way. And it brought a new sense of realism to procedures. At the time, that was really starting to get big. Like, Dragnet was a big deal on TV.
Right.
And so, like, just from then on, though, you got The French Connection, which is a really gritty movie in 1971. You got, all police procedural movies, all that stuff after that, all influenced by this movie. So,
yeah.
Oh, another
landmark.
Yeah.
Landmark movie in so many ways. Even though you really only, I mean, everybody just knows it, I would say, because of the chase scene, which obviously still holds up today.
Yeah.
But you don't realize, and I didn't even really realize until this time watching it, just about all the realism and the how much impact that had on police procedurals or medical procedurals to this day. So yeah, absolutely.
Because then you have the show Emergency comes out. Then you have just like Adam 12, all these different shows that just like really got big in the 70s. And I just it was so cool. So going back to, I'm really impressed by Bill Hickman's stunt driving, because he went on to have a career in Hollywood as the driver. Especially in The French Connection, The 7-Ups, and I can't remember, there's a couple other flicks that he was in. But he, at the end, when they're on the highway, and he's coming up on, and then like the cars are coming towards him, and he squeaks past and like totally sideswipes a car and then keeps going. Again, not planned, and they kept that in because it looked cool, and they were all going for a sense of realism. So I thought that was pretty awesome. There's a famous tale.
Well, and not only that, like, when you see I don't know, I mean, maybe some people know, but when you hit something in your car, being able to keep control of it and to go with it and not just automatically, spin out or lose control, that is a huge amount of skill involved there. Not, yes, it would have been cooler, if you never hit anything, but being able to hit something and recover that is highly skilled.
Yes, absolutely. And a fun tale about this to see when sometimes McQueen's driving and when Bud Eakins isn't driving is the rear view mirror. When they show the interior shots of the Mustang, that if the rear view mirror is showing Steve McQueen's face, it's Steve McQueen driving, but then like the next scene you'll see it tilted downwards, and that's because Bud Eakins is driving. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, this is a little bit sad, but I wanted to bring this up. Bill Hickman was actually a close friend of James Dean, who James Dean was a budding race car driver as well. And so 13 years earlier, he was following James Dean to a race in Salinas, California, and he was driving Dean's station wagon, and then Dean was driving in his Porsche Spyder, which is a sweet car. And so that's the accident that happened where James Dean died. And so Bill Hickman was actually the guy that pulled James Dean's body out of the wreckage. So that's really sad, but I felt like that was something interesting that, Bill Hickman, he'd been around in Hollywood for quite some time. He was a well recognized, well respected stunt driver, and obviously friends with some pretty big wigs back at the time. So that was
Legit
interesting,
dude.
Yeah. Let's see here. So going back to the chase scene, let's see. Yeah, they were filming a chase scene. It took 3 weeks, resulting in 9 minutes and 42 seconds of footage, and which that's a lot of planning. And that's one thing I love about this. We keep going back to realism, but I'm comparing it to Fast and Furious, how it's so superhero over the top. Even the first movie, like when they jump the train track and the train goes right behind him, how that's digitally inserted, so they were fine. This movie, like this scene is so cool because you can just watch it and you're like, everything I'm seeing here. There's no Hollywood trickery. These are literally all stunt driver guys that had meticulously planned this out. All of the stunt drivers in the pedestrian cars have it planned out to know where they're going to go so that nobody died, because they're, like I said, they're driving up to almost 120 miles an hour on these streets. That is crazy. And then not including the actual camera operators on the Corvette next to him driving back and forth.
Right.
And those cameras were big. They were filming with film. They weren't filming digital. So if you watch the making of this movie, it's really cool the way they have the Corvette like stripped down and then these big cameras on there. And that must have been such a rush just filming it. You had the wind on your face.
Oh,
you're just like,
my gosh.
Like that would have been so cool to be in the making of this movie.
Right. And even just even the shots from inside the Charger and the Mustang. Yeah. Again, that's a big camera. A dude manning that camera inside the car as that car is flying at, over 100 miles an hour.
Yes.
Or even doing 70 or 80 on some of those curvy, streets in San Francisco. I mean, that's bonkers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've driven in San Francisco, as of you, and like those streets are straight down and straight up.
Yeah.
And so just that's the sequences where they're okay. So the part I talked about before when they're just slamming down when they're going down the hills, and it's just like bam, and then they're clearing it going down. Anytime they hit, they could have spun out and just like gone a different direction. Like the craftsmanship is great. I mean, we talked about The Rock last year and how they had that big stunt scene that was on one street predominantly going downhill, and Michael Bay said that was the worst part of the movie, was just getting the permits for that. They shot for 3 freaking weeks, and the mayor was just throwing stuff at them, being like, dude, do whatever you want. So they had so much creative freedom to do what they wanted in this film. Like I'm pretty sure like the main thing they wanted they didn't get was just filming on the Golden Gate Bridge, and that's pretty amazing, you know.
Right.
Oh, one more thing too, where time's kind of starting running away from us, but Steve McQueen and Bill Hickman, they went out on the raceway and they were practicing driving inches away from each other at speeds over 100 miles an hour, so they get comfortable driving real close to each other, and they did that for a while, so they were really comfortable doing the stunt chases. And so I just thought that was pretty freaking cool. There's some really cool behind the scenes footage of Steve McQueen driving, and he puts his hand out and he pats the car next to him, and they're like laughing, and it's freaking cool.
Dudes, some legit dudes in this movie. I mean, not just as actors, but as true professionals in their craft and in their other interests, as in, you know, race car driving or just phenomenal. It's
awesome. So let's roll into final thoughts real quick. Josh, I pretty much summed up what I wanted to say. What about you?
Me too, man. It's, as you know, like we were saying, all the procedural stuff is actually really cool about this movie. But let's be honest, it's all about that car chase scene, and I think we beat it to death, so I feel good about it.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to say, I watched the trailer for this. The car chase scene is all over the trailer. Robert Vaughn said that people repeatedly went to go see this film just to see the car chase, which is it's about an hour and 10 minutes into the film, and it's just...
It's what, 6 minutes long or something?
It's 10 minutes and 78 seconds is what the car chase is. And I love, too, the fact... Oh, I forgot about that. Basically... I can't remember who it was, but somebody showed Steve McQueen and another producer the movie Robbery, which is a British film that came out the year before that Peter Yates had directed. And Steve McQueen loved how he filmed the car chase scene in that, which I think is like a 15-minute car chase, but it's not as epic as this one. And he liked it, so that's how they actually hired Peter Yates, who then Peter Yates became a pretty well-known director after that time in America. So this was like his first American movie, and I think it's his most famous movie to date as well. So
and all thanks a big part to Steve McQueen saying, "I want that guy to direct this movie."
Steve McQueen did have a lot of star power in putting this movie together. Absolutely.
Right. Well, it was his production company, which is cool.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, it's his first movie that was his production company. You're right. All right. So let's do final verdicts then. Josh, you think this movie, what do you think? Did it hit the spot when it came out?
Yes, I think it absolutely hit the mark. It's an easy A, I would say, just on the box office, but also just from its reviews. It was very highly reviewed when it came out.
Right.
So that's an A.
I agree. I give it an A plus. I think it was a home run when it came out. It's just like we talked about before. It's a cool movie. It makes you feel cool watching it. You feel cooler after you watch the movie. You're just like, I experienced something. And it's cool.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see how many more times I can say cool. Is it still relevant today?
I mean, historically speaking, yes. Congress actually added it to the that official list or whatever collection of, most what's the word I'm looking for? Impactful films in film history or whatever. They have I'm totally botching that, but it's definitely a very recognized film even to this day. And obviously the car scene, as we've been saying over and over, it still holds up today very much. It's definitely the benchmark by every good car chase scene since then.
Right.
But even just for the procedural stuff, I think that's still, when you watch it today, even by today's standards, you're like, wow, this is pretty legit. Like you said, you might get kind of lost or kind of zone out because you're so used to having pretty accurate procedural stuff done in, new films and TV and stuff. But
right.
Anyways, I digress. I guess I would I don't know. This one's always a little bit hard for me to say because of either cult status or historical status. I mean, is it relevant today? I mean, the car scene, absolutely. I don't know. I guess overall, I'm floating somewhere between a C+ and a B-.
I would say, for me, I'm gonna give it an A. Actually, is it still relevant? And the reason I do is because if you're into film, you know about this movie. This movie is, it's the godfather of car chases. It's not like we're like, oh yeah, that was the first movie that had a car. It's like, no, like car enthusiasts constantly still
reference this.
Right. 2019, they re-released a new version of the Mustang, the Bullitt Mustang. And so it's definitely there around. Steve McQueen is forever an Hollywood icon. And like you said, the police procedural stuff, which doesn't get talked about a lot in this, but it's one of the first movies to do really serious police procedurals and does it well. And of course, the car chase scene is I would say the most famous car chase scene in cinema, honestly. I think it is.
I would say that too. It's my favorite.
Right.
I think the quality and like I was saying, a big part of it is the audio. The audio is very authentic.
Right.
Just ballsy, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I gave it an A as is it still relevant, because I think it's a juggernaut of a film in itself. So
sweet.
Yeah.
I'll settle on a B then for that. We'll split the difference there.
I'm like pulling you up. I'm like, come on. No.
Like I said, it's always hard for me to gauge that well. But anyways,
it is
personal enjoyment.
It is hard to gauge that. You're right. And we're going to have to figure out a way to do like, is it relevant today? As in like, yeah, like pop culture and then like film culture. So
film culture. Yeah,
I guess
you're right.
we should probably do more film culture because we're talk about movies.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Personal enjoyment, Josh.
Okay, so this is a little tricky for me. I give it, just as a whole, I give it a C+. And I think part of it is because I'd seen it a few times, even though I really enjoyed this movie. I give it a C+. But obviously, the car scene is an A++ for me. I mean, I couldn't wait for it to get there. And like I said, my heart was racing by the time it was over, and I almost had to convince myself to pay attention to the rest of the movie because
yeah,
I was just so pumped about that scene.
Oh yeah.
So, I guess if I'm going to combine the two, my extreme love for the car scene and then my kind of just above average enjoyment of the movie overall, we'll settle on a B.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with a B as well because, like you said, the movie is, unfortunately, to today's standards, a lot of the movie is slow because it's went for so much realism. And unfortunately,
right.
I don't feel like that actually holds up very well in today. But, of course, the car scene, can't talk enough about that. Awesome scene. If you watchers have not seen this movie and you're going to watch it again, don't go into this movie expecting it to be like this crazy Fast and Furious epic car chase because that's more Hollywoodized. This is like a gritty, you're literally like on the side of the street watching two people racing, and it's intense. It's very different.
Yeah.
And I would definitely recommend watching it and really pay attention to the small details. It shows why it's so impressive. Because everything they do on screen, like I said, the cars are not souped up. The drivers are that good. They make mistakes and they keep going. That's why it's so cool. So yeah, I give it a personal enjoyment for B as well because I actually really enjoyed the showdown at the end in the airplane, the tarmac. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it is good, and I'm glad obviously I wasn't gonna not finish the movie, or not finish, however you say that.
Right.
But I had sort of forgotten that, the ending is pretty cool. Like, it is intense.
Right.
There's some good foot chase scenes in this movie, too. And they're just very overshadowed by the car.
Right, very much. I like the hospital chase. I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
The music, when they have music, I love the soundtrack. It's so good. I swear that Ocean's 11 was very much inspired by this style of movie. Which kind of funny, actually. Steve McQueen unfortunately had to turn down the Ocean's 11 movie due to scheduling conflicts. Otherwise, he would have been in that too.
He would have been amazing.
I know, right? Okay, and Midnight Watch.
So, yeah, this is another weird one for me. It is not a Midnight Watch for me, but you better believe it. If that car scene's about to be on, I'm watching it. If it's on, I'm going to finish the car scene, probably rewind it to watch the whole car scene. I mean,
Yes.
but every other part, I don't know that I would finish it.
I agree. It's not a midnight watch for me as well, even though I highly recommend this movie for film fanatics, for sure. Because, but it's not a midnight watch for me as well. Well, where did you watch this movie, Josh?
I had to rent it on Prime.
Oh, okay. I actually had an HBO subscription, so they had it on there. So I was able to watch it through that. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
And it's funny, I do own this movie. I just, because of me having a baby, it's easier for me to just watch something on my phone now than popping the disc in. And so that's why I ended up watching it on HBO instead of watching them. But I do own a hard copy of this movie. I definitely consider this to be definitely a keeper for sure. And it makes me want to.
Oh yeah, if you're a film fan, you should definitely own this one. I mean, this is some amazing Hollywood history, and it, like we said, the car scene still absolutely holds up today.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Special thanks to our sound producer, Jake Colvin. If you had as much fun as we did on this episode, we would love it if you shared it with your family, friends, and any car enthusiasts that you think would like it.
That's right. Please subscribe, rate, review our podcast, especially on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify also, YouTube, and just about every other platform. Please check out our Instagram and Facebook pages. We're also on Twitter. And we'd love if you would join in the conversation on what is your Midnight Watch. And you can directly reach us at the Midnight Watch Podcast at gmail.com.
Once again, thanks everybody for listening. You guys have a great, fantastic, awesome week. And as always, keep up the watch.